break loose between now and 2022, because the whole world has to be in chaos, right? We know from the evil side, if you will, out of chaos comes order, the new world order. And so again, from a Catholic perspective, the old world order was Catholicism, Christianity, Christendom. Now we're talking about the new world socialist republic, the new world order under this Antichrist figure. So yeah, a lot going on, Sean. It's really, truly hard to keep up on all of the current events coming out on a daily basis.
Kun sinulla on Elisa Viihde ja siinä viasat urheilu, saat maan parhaan kattauksen jalkapalloa. Eikä silmänruoka lopu kesken. Homma toimii kätevästi niin TV:llä kuin tabletillakin. Elisan.
Well, that was a great recap, and you mentioned James Perloff. One of the interviews of which I'm very proud is the one titled "The Elite Don't Want You to Know God is Real," and James and I deconstructed evolution with his fact-based research in the books he's written, and I think it's a very powerful testimony to the fact that the elite have been deceiving humankind for millennia. And there's so much hidden knowledge that the elite possess that they don't want to share with us. It really begs the question, how much of this is being engineered by these elite? Now, for instance, you mentioned James Perloff in your interview. You mentioned Israel, the Balfour Declaration, the Rothschild role in the reinstatement of Israel. Most Christians don't know that, right? And so most Christians are standing down to this evil, believing that all of the prophecy of the Bible is coming true exactly as it should. We need to stand with Israel. And at the end of the day, there's no need to fight against this because we're all going to be raptured out when Jesus comes back.
Yeah, that's it.
And if you understand the truth, if you understand how humanity is being manipulated by these Satanists, not only is it going to make you angry, it's going to make you want to stand up, fight, and tell the truth. How come we're not hearing this narrative that you and I have just described in most churches on any given Sunday?
Well, again, I can only speak from a Catholic perspective. We would say heresy is everywhere. I mean, as Catholics, we believe not only in Scripture, but in Catholic tradition, and that's found in Scripture, by the way, where Paul is talking about hold on to those traditions. So those early writings of the early church fathers, we really cling to, and that's what I use as a source for the material that I bring forth, and actually drawing a correlation between this Antichrist figure and what I have to say. Now, you know, that whole movement in general with Herzl or whatever, people have to realize that Herzl went to Pope St. Pius X in the early 1900s looking for his blessing, and Pope St. Pius X turned him away. And he said, no, listen, you reject our Lord. We reject any sort of Zionist movement or, you know, gathering together of quote-unquote Jews in Israel. And again, when you go back to your 4th century Bible, St. Jerome, the Douay-Rheims Bible, which we use as Catholics, when you read the footnotes, Sean, when you're reading Israel and Zion, that's always a reference to the church. It's not a reference to any sort of, you know, regathering or puppet state of Israel. Now, I will say this as a side note from tradition, the Jews actually do convert to the Catholic Church when the two witnesses come. And if I am right in suggesting that the Antichrist is not too far off, perhaps in the next decade sometime, then that would mean Elijah and Enoch would be returning and preaching. But yeah, Schofield, I mean, and that's what Perloff went into, Mr. Perloff. We talked about that background. We talked about how this whole narrative and misinterpretation is leading Christians to just stand down. Yeah. Here comes the second coming of Christ. Well, no, folks, that's what we would call the Antichrist. And that's why it's so important to stick with tradition. That's what we would say as Catholics. So I see that everywhere I go. And on the basis of that, you know, sometimes I get labeled an anti-Semite, and it's like, really? I mean, I'll literally give, you know, scripture quotes and people will call me that. It's like, there's error everywhere. That's basically, to put it in a nutshell, is there false doctrines everywhere, and people are being led astray. And you and I both know who controls the media. So, and, you know, with this recent attack on fake news, you know, your type of show and my show are being labeled fake news. That's why we're not circulated in the mainstream. I've been censored quite heavily. My talk with Gavin McInnes, the popular comedian, he's been seen on Fox News, Red Eye. It got pulled down the other day. I had to re-upload it. I can't even post my own articles on Twitter anymore, Sean. They're labeling me a malicious site. So that's why we can't get information on. That's why I really appreciate you taking the time out to have me on, so that we can keep moving good information throughout the internet.
Yeah, well, it's my pleasure. And, you know, I'll just say this as it relates to the label of anti-Semite. That doesn't work anymore. I mean, the world is waking up very, very quickly to the fact that if you want to know who rules you, understand the one group you can't criticize, right? I mean, they're passing laws all over the EU that you cannot ask any questions about anything related to Jews, or you're a criminal, a thought criminal, or worse, a bigot, an anti-Semite. It just doesn't work anymore. People are waking up just as people have woken up to Pizzagate. Again, not to say that all Jews are bad, but the Rothschilds certainly are. That's a conversation that's worth having if we live in a free society. The problem is, increasingly around the globe, many people are finding out they no longer live in a free society. And I'll tell you this, here's the other problem, Eric. I've said for a long time now that we live in times that rival the times when Jesus was crucified. Pilate gave the crowd a choice. You can put Jesus to death or this horrible murderer rapist. And the mob rule said Jesus. They called for the blood of Jesus. Insanity, right? I think people are just as crazy today. And if the powers that be get this satanic New World Order, one world government system they want, the day when they will round up Christians and tell Christians you need to denounce Christ or we will chop your heads off, there will be mob rule there too, and I think people will cheer for it.
Oh, there's no question about it. Here's a synopsis of what you just said, Sean. This comes from St. Anthony the Great, a early Catholic Church father. Listen to this. A time is coming when men will go mad, and when they see someone who is not mad, they will attack him saying, "You are mad. You are not like us." I mean, that completely summarizes our times. And yeah, there's kind of a cloaking, if you will. People can no longer see clearly. They're not able to use their reason and their intellect. They're kind of like riding upon the wave of emotionalism. And with the mainstream narrative, of course, if you're following that, you're bound to land in the lap, if you will, of the Antichrist. But I agree with that. You know, great persecution is coming. Listen, ISIS is just the beginning to it. It's going to get far worse, and that's what the early church father warned of as well. This second persecution coming of Christianity in general is going to be far worse than the period in early Roman history. Far worse, they said. But there's good news to that, as I said. In much, how do we put this? As an analogy, we can say the Catholic Church is going through a passion like our Lord went through our passion. So we see all these scandals coming out. Everyone's Catholic bashing. At a certain point, Sean, it's going to seem like the Catholic Church is gone. Even people who don't identify as Catholics, Christians, whatever, they're going to say, you know, where's the Catholic Church now? Why is that? Because when this false prophet steps onto the scene and implements his New Age religion, his self-realization program, Benedict XVI will be on the run. He'll be killed, as Catholic prophecy suggests and the message of Fatima suggests. And people are going to go, where's the Pope? There's going to be no Pope because this false prophet character is not going to call himself a Pope. So you see what I'm saying? We're going underground again. And so we're on the precipice of that. And I'm just trying trying to prepare people for that day to where, just Christians in general are going to be persecuted. And we're just so close, Sean. I don't think people realize this, but I completely agree. People have gone mad. Their intellects are concealed, and I think it's mainly attributed to how most people are living in sin. They've turned their backs on God, and this is what Our Lady of Fatima warned about. She came to the world in 1917 and warned mankind, you're going in the wrong direction, generally speaking. It wasn't even meant for the church. It was meant for the whole world. And they said, unless you return back to a Christian society, essentially you will be handed over to the Antichrist, to put it in a nutshell.
Moi! Tiesitkö, että DNA-netillä näet Netflixin leffat ja sarjat 4K-kuvan laadulla ja pätkimättä? DNA-netti on näet nopein netti Netflixin katsomiseen. Enemmän viihtymistä meiltä DNAlta.
All right, well, let me ask you this. As it relates to those who are aligned against us, those who are aligned against Western values and morals, those that would instead opt to worship Satan, are these people actively trying to open the gates? Are they actively trying to usher in a satanic influence from the realm which is unseen? Because if we take a look at what's going on, again, the Gothard Tunnel opening ceremony could not have been riddled with more satanic imagery. If we take a look at what's going on with CERN, trying to break the veil, in their own words, to go into different dimensions. If we take a look at the Arch to the Temple of Baal, which arrived in New York City in October of 2016. Again, it just seems like more of the revelation of the means. These people are Satanists. These Pizzagate, child molester, child trafficking monsters, at the end of the day, at the highest levels of power, appear to be Satanists. And if you look at CERN, if you look at the Gothard Tunnel opening, if you look at the Temple of Baal that they're rolling out all over the planet, it appears to be that they're coming right out and saying, yes, you're darn right, we're Satanists, and we're going to help usher him in to sit atop the throne of the world. Is that what they're doing?
Yeah, there's no question about it. I've had numerous guests on. We're talking about CERN here now a little bit. Anthony Patch I've had on. We're in agreement with that. But we have to remember what Scripture says, and this is prophetic, and most people don't tie this together. Matthew 16:18, Jesus goes on to say, he's talking to Peter. Again, most people don't realize he's actually the first Catholic Pope. And he says, and the gates of hell will not prevail. Well, what are we talking about? We're talking about a merger, if you will, between the immaterial world and the material world. So we argue, this whole UFO phenomenon is nothing but demons in the air, which Our Lady of La Salette actually warned of and approved message in the Catholic Church, 1846. She said Antichrist would work with these demons in the air. That to us is your UFO phenomena, if you will. But then, yes, CERN, this opening up of the gates of hell. Now, this is the major prophetic piece in all of this. There is one Catholic mystic, okay? She was, if I could meet anyone from past church history, it would be her. Probably the most holiest soul ever. She lived to be like 90 years old. She actually had this stigmata. I'm not sure if you and your listeners know what that is, but she bore the wounds of Christ, which medical science said was not a fraud, meaning it was supernatural in nature. She once performed a 5-year fast without food and water, to give you any indication of the power of the Eucharist. As Catholics, that's what we do at Holy Mass every week. I'm building up to a point here because she revealed these 3 days of darkness coming, okay? And she talked about how you better not be outside on this Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, that the crisis would explode suddenly, the sky will be on fire, the earth will split. People are going to die, she says, from the thunder and lightning alone. Now, why am I saying all this? Because she says the devils will be let loose. During this darkness, the devils and wicked will take on the most hideous shapes, and all those who even go to look outside will be killed because of fright. Okay, that's what we're building towards. That's what they're working on. They're trying to get these devils literally into our world. And that's why Father Malachi Martin said the veil was about to be lifted. And I keep warning people, we're going from diabolical disorientation into the twilight zone, folks. I mean, listen, I'm sure you've covered this too, and you know all about Project Blue Beam and how they're staging holographic images. I mean, there's a lot of things that they can do.
Yep.
So it becomes just like, okay, did I really see that? Did I not see that? Flying fortresses in the sky, crosses we're seeing, all types of sounds in the sky. Folks, if you're not prepared now, even our Lord warned that men would faint and die because of the things about to happen upon the earth. You're going to see things that you didn't want to see. And that's all I'm saying is we build up towards this tribulation period. That's the heights of it. And every devil will be let loose. That's where you get your CERN program. So there's no doubt they're moving it they're putting it right in our face. I mean, they're saying, okay, here it is. Whoever's not with us, guess what? If you don't take this mark of the beast, we know from Scripture what happens. It's off with your head. It's FEMA camps. You know, it's the guillotine, whatever. And ultimately, as I mentioned, you know, not a whole lot of people are going to survive this particular period.
Yeah. You know what's really shocking about CERN, and as we have this conversation and we delve into the spiritual component of CERN, which has really been made clear by even their own movie, Symmetry.
Yes.
Their own movie that they produced at CERN called Symmetry. I think they are trying to usher in that which is unseen. I think what you're saying is spot on, and it's really terrifying because most of our friends and neighbors and our colleagues have never even heard of CERN, the most complex, complicated, really one of the most expensive, as far as we know, machines ever built by man, devised and built over the course of 50 years. And most people have no idea it exists, and they certainly have no idea what's going on there. Isn't that just astounding?
Yeah, it is astounding, but through programs like yourself, Sean, so that's what I said. Just keep plugging away, keep getting out your information, keep getting on guests, and getting this information out to the public until, you know, there probably is going to be a certain point where ultimately they do censor us. I mean, I don't know. It seems they want us gone for good, so I don't know how much longer, you know, I even have to stay online. I don't know at a certain point if it'll be safe to be online with the information that we present. But the bottom line is people need to wake up to this and visit sites like SGT Report and tradcatnight.blogspot.com. Otherwise, if you're following that mainstream narrative, I mean, who knows how they're going to pitch certain events that we're about to see, including the UFO phenomenon. For me, that's going to be, in the next 4 years, they'll start really driving that down our throats. And in my opinion, it will be disclosed in the next 5 years or so. But if I can, Sean, I didn't mean to kind of go off track here, but in terms of infiltration of the church, if I could give out some resources to you and your listeners, not only was there Father Malachi Martin, there was a figure called Archbishop Lefebvre, who was very instrumental and stood up in what we call Catholic resistance. So not everyone was following the Pope there, you know, in the 60s and 70s. And he said, no, we're not following this new religion. And so there's a growing number, just as there's a growing number in your community and the information you present, just from a traditional Catholic perspective, we are growing and growing and growing. There was Father Luigi. There's 3 main books I'd like you all to write, because these come from the Freemasons and Marxists themselves about how they were going to infiltrate and subvert the church. AA 1025, Memoirs of an Anti-Apostle. Then there was School of Darkness by Bella Dodd, who actually led the Communist Party here in America. She actually converted to the Catholic religion and exposed them all. And she gave testimony to that over 1,000 Marxists infiltrated Catholic seminaries. And guess where they are today, Sean? Just like in any business, you start out at the bottom, you end up at the top. Take a look at the Vatican. And then also Alta Vendita, which came from Italian Freemasonry, and it was basically a blueprint for them to subvert the papacy. And so I just wanted to get that out there, because that's a good read, even for non-Catholics, so you can help understand you know, what's going on here with Francis, and why in the world is he saying such, you know, goofy things. I mean, I've been saying he reads more like a Sunday morning comic than he does like any serious theologian. I mean, it's preposterous, the things that this individual is saying.
All right, let me ask you this before we let you go. I just want your opinion on how this has all come to be. Because for those of us that are normally wired, Christian or not, hurting people, hurting children, introducing GMOs, destroying the environment, destroying our food, putting chemical weapon delivery systems into people's bodies through vaccines, all of this evil that we're seeing, endless war, these merchants of endless war that seem to have no problem with women and children being blown up in all of these unconstitutional wars of aggression in which we've been involved. How does this happen? I mean, I guess if we take a look at the systematic operation in this country to destroy Western values and Western civilization and Western morals, to destroy the family, we can look at the Rothschilds, we can look at the Rockefellers, but we also have to look at the protocols of the learned elders of Zion, which many call a fraud or a fake. But if you read those protocols, that is the plan that seems to have been implemented, and it is destroying our society. Your thoughts on any of that? I mean, it's just the darkness astounds me. Your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. The protocols, in my opinion, is thoroughly accurate. What's interesting to note there, too, I'm going to go back and try to do a blog on this. They make note that once the West would wake up to what they were doing, they said they were going to head underground because, A, they know of, and this is where it might get a little bit conspiratorial for your listeners, but there is a space body approaching us. This isn't Catholic prophecy, that well-known Planet X thing they're talking about, that's very real. That isn't conspiratorial. So there is something approaching us, and they're well aware of it. They've been building their underground bunkers. But then also World War III, that's more specific. So they said once the West woke up, hey, we're going to head underground and move government more or less underground and leave us up here like little ants to be basically roasted. But the bottom line is, I completely agree with you. I would say this first and foremost: it's a turning away from God. Yeah. Turning away from God first and foremost. People didn't care. People these days, Sean, they care about their gadgets and gadgets. They care about Dancing with the Stars and Monday Night Football. They're not interested really in salvation or any of this stuff going on. And that's partly why, as you know, they have media. They want people distracted. They want people not knowing what's really going on. So I would say first and foremost, it is a turning away from God. But then also we have to remember God can make use of suffering. We know as Christians that saints are made through the cross. So not only did Christ suffer, but we have to suffer in Christ, and that's the persecution that we're experiencing, but then also whatever it could be, mental suffering, physical suffering. We can use this for the sanctification of our souls and expand in what I call selfless love. So these sufferings that are coming, Sean, this is going to help us to be a better people. I always encourage people to go out there and do works of mercy. Start helping people. When the economic collapse does happen, Sean, we shouldn't be, standing there with rifles protecting our 17 pallets of peanut butter. We really, we have to be a little bit more prudent than that. It can't be, kind of like, I'm going to blow your head off, you're going to blow off my head. At some point, what do we say? Hey, we got to work together as a community and get through this. The bottom line is God, out of evil, God can make a good, and that's the ultimate message of Fatima. And truly, that's really what the apocalypse is all about. I mean, I know people open up the Revelation and apocalypse and they'll see all doom and gloom, but it's about Christ's victory over the darkness. It's about showing out of an evil can come a good. It's about repentance. It's about conversion. Okay, and that's why it's so pivotal for us to turn back to the light, as you said, and turn back to Catholic truth. And eventually, through these chastisements and tribulation, it is recorded that mankind ultimately does reconcile with God, and everything, it'll be springtime year-round, basically. I mean, everything will work harmoniously once again. But as I think everyone can see there's a great storm on the horizon. And if you're looking for all the latest videos, I've got over 1,200. Get to Tradcat Night on YouTube, doing my best to stay on top of all the latest breaking news, tons of prophetic videos, all the Marian apparitions that have been approved. It's going to be pretty interesting times, Sean, and I really appreciate you having me on. And if you'd like to do this on a more regular basis, as I've been telling some past guests, feel free to pick my brain and we'll go over whatever topic you like.
All right. I really appreciate that. And I just want to leave people with this. When we talk about fake news, when we talk about the onslaught against truth, against those of us who are standing for truth, speaking for truth, and trying to expose evil and corruption, I think we do need to go back to the Bible, and I just want to read John chapter 8, verse 44. You are of your father, the devil, and your will is to do your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks out of his own character, for he is a liar and the father of lies. I think that helps us understand who the elite worship and why the elite behave the way they do, Eric. So final word to you, remind people how they can find you on YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely. Tradcat Night on Twitter, Tradcat Night on YouTube, tradcatnight.blogspot.com. If you even want to follow along on Facebook, simply search my name, Eric Gajewski. Look for the avatar, which is an eagle. There's a double-headed eagle there, and follow along there too. That's mostly where I participate. Bottom line is this: as Sean mentioned, we live in an absolute satanic culture of death. By turning back to just the fundamentals of what we know to do as Christians, we truly can make a difference in our own communities. I would offer this: rather than we have to be
on page 15, it says Earth cannot sustain larger populations of wealthier individuals. Now, this should mortify all of you that are listening right now, because North America and Europe are listed as wealthier populated areas. They're saying that fertility reductions are not enough. There needs to be greater efforts towards reducing the global population.
This interview is being brought to you by our friends at Virtual Shield VPN. Protect your information, location, and search history from the prying eyes of Big Brother and big data internet providers without slowing your internet speed. And definitely check out IdentiSafe, a great Virtual Shield feature that includes a microphone and webcam blocker that also automatically deletes browser data, cookies, and can even shred files so that they're unrecoverable. Use the link below to take an extra 30% off your first term. So visit virtualshield.com by using the link below and give yourself the gift of internet security. Hey friends, thank you so much for tuning in. I have a very special returning guest to the program, and you're going to want to stay tuned for this two-part call with Deborah Tavares. I had her on just a couple of weeks ago, and the demand for Deborah is so strong, people wanted to get her back on to hear more because, you know, the plot against humanity thickens, and it's a genocidal plot, my friends. I'll welcome Deborah now. Deborah, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you so much, Sean. We have a lot of information to cover. I can certainly direct everyone to stopthecrime.net. What you are going to hear being covered is diabolical, and you can download all of these documents from the very top of stopthecrime.net. They are so profound that we gave them top billing on our website. Again, stopthecrime.net. Please subscribe to stopthecrime.net and go to our YouTube channel. We're posting constantly about these programs that you're going to hear us discuss in just a moment.
Deborah, I just want to start with a clip that I put in my micro-documentary called Red Alert, The Enemy is Inside the Gates. I released that on February 24th, and it features a clip from Weather Underground infiltrator Larry Grothwall. And as I'm sure you well remember, it was Bill Ayers who was a member of the Weather Underground. And while he was a member of the Weather Underground in the 70s, they bombed the New York Police Department, the Pentagon, U.S. Congress building. I mean, these people were part of a terrorist organization. And according to Larry Grothwall, they wanted to eliminate 25 million people that couldn't be indoctrinated or quote-unquote re-educated into the new way of communist thinking. And thank God we beat those people. But I'm going to play this clip, folks, because I want you to know that they're still out there and they still want to do away with many of us. This is Larry Grothwall.
They also believed that their immediate responsibility would be to protect against what they called the counter-revolution. And they felt that this counter-revolution could best be guarded against by creating and establishing re-education centers in the Southwest, where we would take all the people who needed to be re-educated into the new way of thinking and teach them how things were going to be. I ask, well, what is going to happen to those people that we can't re-educate, that are die-hard capitalists? And the reply was that they'd have to be eliminated. And when I pursued this further, they estimated that they would have to eliminate 25 million people in these re-education centers. And when I say eliminate, I mean kill. 25 million people.
All right, so folks, I just wanted to play that for you because the enemies of humanity would think nothing. Look, what has happened throughout history? They round up millions of people and kill them. The peace that we've seen in the last century is really the exception to the rule.
Well, that's exactly right, Sean. In fact, what we just heard being said right now is outdated information because we've certainly leaped ahead with technologies. Now we have a frequency system being deployed in all of our cities now through 5G, which we will get into greater discussion in a few minutes. But what I really want to have everyone understand, it's vital, and you must understand this. And I'm going to be reading out of America's Last Minuteman. It's what James Traficant kept saying when he was the governor. In the record, the congressional record. I'm just going to read this. It says, it's an established fact that the United States federal government has been dissolved by the Emergency Banking Act of March 9th, 1933. Goes on to Statutory 1, Public Law, etc., declared by President Roosevelt being bankrupt and insolvent. The 73rd Congress, in session June 5th of 1933, joint resolution to suspend the gold standard and abrogate the gold clause, dissolved the sovereign authority of the United States and the official capacities of all United States governmental offices, officers, and departments. And it is further evidence that the United States federal government exists today in name only. The receivers of the United States bankruptcy were the international bankers via the United Nations, the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund. All United States offices, officials, and departments are now operating within a de facto status in name only under the emergency war powers. The U.S. federal government now exists in name only. Now, what is extremely important to understand as we go through some of these policies that you're going to hear is that now all of us have been identified as the enemy. And what do I mean by that? I'm going to read to you part of Senate Report 93549. It's the Emergency Powers Statutes of 1973. It says, in order to maintain dictatorial control and authorization of the many division agencies of the executive branch, the sitting president must formally declare a national emergency every single year. This has been an ongoing ritual since 1933, according to Senate Report 93549. Once the emergency is declared, the common law is abolished, the Constitution is abolished, and we fall under absolute will of government or public policy. We're under a system of corporate public policy or war powers. All the government needs to continue is to have public opinion on their side. If public opinion can be kept in sufficient degrees on the side of the government, statutes, laws, and regulations, and executive orders can continue to be passed. The Constitution has had no meaning. The Constitution was suspended. It has been for over 80 years. We're not under law. Law has been abolished. It's important to understand that now we are the enemy of the state, which is then going to create the understanding of some of the latest genocide programs we're going to be talking about. But again, the federal and state governments are not real. They are privately owned corporations calling themselves governments. The judges are all privately employed administrators called judges, and the law is nothing more than their corporate regulations called statutes. All laws created by our corporations or our government are private corporate regulations called public law, statutes, codes, and ordinances to conceal the true nature. Americans have been indoctrinated through expert programming, conditioning, prejudice, and patriotism to treat information like this as being ridiculous, absurd, and untrue. And it's time to look around and see what is happening. They have eliminated the family farms, the local stores, placed us into cities, given our industry away to break the unions, issued valueless currency, stolen our gold and silver, raised taxes, stolen our paper currency back, involved us in staged wars, false flags, and given a massive foreclosures of American homes, poisoning our air and our water supply and our food. So we don't have a government. We are in a genocidal program. And I'm going to be pointing out one of the latest documents that we've come across that underscores the genocide that we're in. Again, this is a free download from the top of stopthecrime.net. Also, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You will hear more of our reality. But the name of this document is called Population Engineering and the Fight Against Climate Change. You can all read this for yourself, but I'm just going to underscore what it's telling us. First of all, it's important to know that this is now part of what is going to be implemented to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, which is fraudulent, fake science. And the authors behind this are authors that not only have bioethic departments in Johns Hopkins University and also the National Institute for Health, or known as NIH. And it's important to know that implants are being used by this as well. And bioethics department that these authors work for means a study of ethical issues emerging from advancements in biology and medicine. And they talk about moral discernment as it relates to medical policies. So what we need to know is what a couple of these authors have said. They have to fight climate change by reducing the population. There are simply too many people, and there will not be enough time to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions to near zero or below that there's claiming it must be. Now remember, zero means no people. Zero is an impossibility. Another one of the authors quotes this: barren wombs as cure for our climate catastrophe. In other words, infertility rates must soar. This populations engineering and fight against climate change tells us that climate change is among the most significant moral problems contemporary societies face in terms of its urgency, global expanse, and the multitude of its attending harms. Population plays an important role in determining just how bad climate change will be. Now, they say on page 1 again, threats posed by climate change justify eliminating people. On page 2, I found this horrific, and this is one of the first documents that I've discovered that had any mention of weather warfare. And it was in small font in the footnote of page 2 of this document. So I'm going to read you this footnote. Along with the standard protocol and repertoire of broader policy efforts to fight climate change, which will include reducing consumption, reducing related waste, switching to renewable energy sources, and funding adaptation efforts, etc., is why the silence on population reduction? They say even if population engineering or reduction has been largely overlooked in the climate change debate, unlike its etiological cousin, geoengineering, etiological means a good dramatic device which is characterized as really what's going on. So they're saying that this is characterizing what's really going on with geoengineering, which is of course weather weapons. And again, in that they say that immigration policies also, for example, are often deployed in order to grow, shrink, or stabilize a national population for economic reasons. So what is happening, and we're seeing increased in homelessness right now in Los Angeles, in California. There are over 58,000 homeless people. We're seeing massive migrations in South Africa right now, and in Venezuela we're seeing millions and millions of people relocating because of the economic hitman in Venezuela with the facts of the economy. And in South Africa, people are fleeing. In fact, it was also just voted that because the white farmers in South Africa operate 72% of the farms, they're going to take those farms with no remuneration. And if it comes to a bloodbath to get the white farmers out of South Africa, that's what will happen. So what we're seeing now are the efforts that are discussed in this document, again entitled Population Engineering and the Fight Against Climate Change. We're hearing and seeing now climate refugees all over the world, and we're seeing that here now in the United States as well. So on page 5 of this document, they talk about global greenhouse gas emissions must decline to near zero or less. Now, the way they say it on page 5, it's confusing, and that's why most people are missing what is really being said, because they tangle us up in words and dates that make it sound like it's so far out that we won't be around by the year 2100. So why do we have to worry that they want greenhouse gas emissions to near zero or less by 2100? But keep in mind, they're accelerating this now by reducing the population. And on page 15, it says Earth cannot sustain larger populations of wealthier individuals. Now, this should mortify all of you that are listening right now, because North America and Europe are listed as wealthier populated areas. And what they're saying, of course, is wealthier societies use more energy, therefore create more greenhouse gas, and we must be reduced. They're saying that fertility reductions are not enough. There needs to be greater efforts towards reducing the global population. And again, they're saying that these justifications are justified because of the morality around the need to save the planet.
Let me jump in and ask you something, Deborah. Now, you and I talked about some of this on our last call, and you brought up to me that I didn't know about. You told me about this Resilient Cities program, this Rockefeller Foundation-funded Resilient Cities program all over the country. And I discovered in my city, yes, there is a Resilient Cities program, which is all about being responsive to really weather catastrophes that we know they will engineer. Have you seen that Deagle.com document that predicts a decline in population of the United States to like 60 or 80 million people, I think by 2025? Have you seen that document?
Yes, I have. Actually, I was on the program and was talking to Dr. Bill about that. We were talking about the ghost cities in China and how the plan is to move over 350 million Chinese villagers and farmers into the ghost cities that were built years ago. They've just had custodial cleanup in these mega cities. They're doing the same thing here in the United States. For those that have noticed, for example, in Los Angeles, in Beverly Hills, in Hollywood, they're building monster towers that in some instances will house over 5,000 people worth of apartment buildings. There's mixed use down below. Largely, all of these structures are unoccupied. Now, as a business person, you have to ask yourself, how could you build something like that and have it unoccupied? Who is paying for the lack of income and the occupancy rates being what they are? So what we're finding is the plans of climate victims or climate refugees will ultimately find their way into these cities. Now, what these cities are, and we're going to leap into that now, they're thought control cyber cages. What do I mean by that? Because, Sean, this is horrific, and we're talking about resilient cities and what's happening behind the scenes of resilient cities. I'm going to read what's happening in New Orleans right now. And for all of you, you need to understand what has already happened. We're going to get into this. New Orleans implemented a CIA-backed predictive policing technology. It's already been implemented and in complete secrecy in 2012. And not even the city council members knew about this program. Palantir has secretly been using New Orleans to test its predictive policing technology. We're going to talk about this now, and we're going to talk about how this dovetails into the resilient plans that are merging as all of our cities cope with climate disasters. This is how these cities are merging into existence. So here we go. The Palantir program began in 2012 as a partnership between New Orleans police and the Palantir Technologies. Palantir is Palantir. a data mining firm founded with seed money from the CIA's venture capitalist firm. According to interviews and documents, the initiative was essentially a predictive policing program, similar to the Heat List program in Chicago, that purports to predict which people are likely drivers or victims of violence. Predictive policing technology has been, of course, highly controversial wherever it's been implemented, but in New Orleans, the program escaped public notice, partly because Palantir established itself as a philanthropic relationship with the city. And thanks to its philanthropic status, the mayor of New Orleans, who's involved in the strong mayor program model of government, the agreement never passed through public procurement process. Now, I want you to remember, strong mayor model of government. This is in your cities. Your mayors are all involved. Your cities are all incorporated. They do not serve you. They are marching forward with FCC policies now to literally create cyber cages. That's why many people are believing that the FEMA camps are not going to be necessary. They're not going to need to re-educate anyone because they're massively reducing millions and millions of overusers of too much stuff, presumably to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So they're going to be literally cooking our brains. We're going to talk about that here as soon as we finish with the Palantir program. But it's police and the Palantir programs, again, it's data mining. So, and it's policing technologies. And this went unobserved in the city of New Orleans. It's now absolutely in force. And it says that Palantir watches everything you do and predicts what you will do next in order to stop it. As of 2013, Palantir's client list included the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, the Center for Disease Control, which is a corporation and advocates vaccinations. I'm just telling you that. So the Center for Disease Control partnered, the Marine Corps, the Air Force, Special Operations Command, West Point, and the IRS. And up to 50% of its business is from the public sector. In QTEL, the CIA's venture arm was an early investor. And what we need to understand is that these technologies have now been rolled out and they're planned for your town. So let's talk about how resiliency is now playing a part in what you're going to hear about new infrastructure. When we hear the word infrastructure, we think of road improvement, we think of water accessibility enhancement. Whatever you think of infrastructure, you would never think likely that they would be using frequencies as an infrastructure to literally create, as I said, the thought control cyber cages that we're being placed in for predictive programming, thought control, and for literally jamming our immune systems and our cellular makeup so we cannot survive. All of this is happening now. So they go on to tell us about New Orleans as being an exemplar of resiliency. They say if any city has shown the ability to rebound, it is New Orleans. New Orleans has taken a pummeling, from fires to yellow fever to hurricanes to the Army Corps of Engineers' faulty levees. And it was difficult to imagine, with 80% of the city underwater after Hurricane Katrina and the levee breaches in 2005, how New Orleans could ever survive, much less thrive. So the reverse of what the pummeling with the weather weapons, they're saying that now our cities are thriving. They are not. These are literally mausoleums for all of us. This is how we are going to be exterminated. So it goes on to tell us that it's fitting that New Orleans was picked by the Rockefeller Foundation to be among the first of 33 cities in the Resilient Cities Sentinel Challenge. Being a resilient city will put the city they say, in a strong position. Rockefeller Foundation President Judith Rodin said, quote, New Orleans is now part of a global network of urban areas focused on building resilience, to share best practices and lead by example for cities. Her foundation has committed over $100 million to the global effort. This is just so far. To say, as part of the Resilient Cities Network, New Orleans will get help for staffing, technical support, and other resources to create and implement a plan for strengthening the city's infrastructure, technology, and other areas. The Clinton Global Initiative gathered some of the project partners, which not only includes Palantir Technologies, but also the American Institute of Architects and Architecture for Humanity in New York. The Rockefeller Foundation initiative will use data to help cities identify risks, look for ways to use technology, and improve infrastructure. Palantir is using its expertise to develop a resilient dashboard for cities to improve their strategic planning and decide on smartest capital investments. And New Orleans was the first to have access to Palantir's dashboard and will help refine it for other cities. Now, let's talk about what we see right here happening in Northern California, and in San Diego, and Lake Tahoe, and other states across the United States have these plans as well. Because of the fires, they want to implement an early warning system. They are going to put in dozens and dozens of cameras that have the viewing range of 150 miles each. They will be operated with infrared. They will be 24/7, 365, and all the data will be stored through Google on the cloud. They're selling this to us as an advanced fire warning. Of course, we know that they're using weather weapons and directed energy weapons to create the fires that we're experiencing here in California, and weather weapons that you're experiencing elsewhere in the country. So they're going to put cameras everywhere. And I would certainly suggest you look at our latest YouTube. It's called Plan to Burn Up Northern California Exposed. Plan to Burn Up Northern California Exposed. Very important to type in the word exposed, because we have many of those plans that we've talked about, but this would be our latest YouTube. And this is as a result of having attended this meeting here in Northern California just last week. So it's extremely important to understand what is headed for you. Also, we have Rockefeller's Resilient Cities as a YouTube, and it's just diabolical what we're seeing happening right now. So we now have the thought police coming in as part of the Resilient Cities and expanding globally. This is an expansion globally. These are the entrapments. These are so concerned about over the years. This is what we're now seeing. Total mind control and total elimination and ability of self-will. We talked about that in The Cooking of Humanity when we interviewed Barry Trower. Again, a YouTube, The Cooking of Humanity. It's very important to understand what we're going to see as we continue down this road of frequency killing of us. Here are just some of the symptoms. Many people are going to have irregular heartbeat rhythms, sleep pattern interruptions, paranoia, hallucinations, insomnia, illusions, drowsiness or absence of feelings, depression, suicidal feelings, visual distortions, confusion, people can't relax, generally feeling unwell and unhappy, anger, manic behavior, problems with movement, flashes, loss of appetite, small seizures, disturbed orientation, auditory problems, visual hallucinations, inability to make decisions, because they're going to be controlling our minds, sensory problems, sight, touch, and sound, confusion, flickering, flashing lights, dizziness, mania, hypertensity. This is jamming our cells. These frequencies are intended to jam our cells. The FCC is behind the rollout of 5G across the United States. The FCC is a corporation. The corporation is only interested in money and elimination of people. That is what it is, and that's why we are the enemy. I think it's fairly obvious that the laws and regulations that are called statutes affect and control every part of us, and this has been deceptively occurring over many, many, many decades, as we talked about. And we've just been sadly propagandized to the point where we don't understand what's real. The media doesn't even report the correct weather because it's all controlled. We know that. But what we now have is this incarceration, entombment of frequencies. It is a silent weapons system. And in the Cooking of Humanity YouTube that we have up, we're talking about a document that was discovered on the whitehouse.gov website some years ago. And it talks about the use of psychotronic weapons and bandwidth, just what is being discussed right now by the 5G.
Well, Deborah, I just want to jump in and say, first of all, folks, stay tuned for part 2, because we're going to get into the horrors of 5G and frequency warfare. Look, you know, when you were talking about clouded thinking and irregular heartbeats and all of the stuff that this technology is going to cause on purpose, Deborah, it reminded me of the thought that came to me was that they're going to give us all electronic lobotomies, at least those of us that are able to survive at all. And given the Deagle.com information, a depopulation agenda does appear to be at hand. Guys, I know this is very scary information. Hopefully, at the end of part 2, we will come up with a bit of good news. Maybe there's a way to stop these people. As I've said in videos in the past, this entire agenda would have been fast-passed if Hillary Clinton was in the White House. Maybe we stand a chance because she's not in there. Maybe we don't. I don't know. We'll get Deborah's opinion on that in part 2. In the meantime, visit stopthecrime.net. Deborah Tavares has been our guest, and stay tuned for the second half, part 2, 5G networks and frequency warfare. Deborah, thank you so much.
You're welcome, Sean.
All right. God bless. And guys, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for doing what you can do within your sphere of influence, in your neighborhood, and on social media. Get the word out. We need to stand together. And you know what? Our numbers dwarf their numbers. Who can stop us when God himself is on our side? God bless you all. Thanks for listening. Have a wonderful week. Bye-bye.
You have to realize your future is at stake. Your life depends on stopping this coup. Every American. What the deep state is doing is a life and death matter.
It's important to understand what the 5G is doing and what they say it's doing. We're told on the IEEE beamforming document that this technology cooked your eyes like eggs in World War II. Cooked your eyes like eggs. And you all need to understand these are military weapons. These are assault frequencies. If you garner nothing more than that, that's what you need to know. It's microwave radiation warfare is what this is.
This interview is being brought to you by our friends at Virtual Shield VPN. Protect your information, location, and search history from the prying eyes of Big Brother and big data internet providers without slowing your internet speed. And definitely check out IdentaSafe a great Virtual Shield feature that includes a microphone and webcam blocker that also automatically deletes browser data, cookies, and can even shred files so that they're unrecoverable. Use the link below to take an extra 30% off your first term. So visit virtualshield.com by using the link below and give yourself the gift of internet security. All right, folks, thanks so much for tuning in. Welcome back. This is part 2 of my conversation with Deborah Tavares from StopTheCrime.net. And guys, the way that part 1 ended was basically with me thinking of the document Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. And this is part 2, all about 5G networks and frequency warfare. As you guys know, Deborah has so much to say, and we only have a finite amount of time. I'll turn this over to Deborah now. Take us away, Deborah. 5G networks. It is an insidious plan. And the FCC is foaming at the mouth to get this thing launched.
Well, we're going to talk about that because it is diabolical, and everyone that is listening, you must engage while your minds are still able to, because we're literally at a point where we will not be able to engage. We will not have control over our bodies or our minds. This is cyborg reality now within our cities. We're going to talk about the 5G, but I'm just going to read this. The emergence of a planet-wide electronic communications grid connecting the thoughts and feelings of billions of people and linking them to rapidly expanding volumes of data, to fast-growing webs of sensors being embedded by millions throughout the world, and to increasingly intelligent devices, robots, and thinking machines, the smartest of which already exceed the capability of all of us in performing a growing list of discrete mental tasks, and now already surpass humans in manifestations of intelligence that we as humans had always assumed would remain the unique province of our species. Sadly, that is no longer the case. So we're going to get into the 5G. It is nothing short of diabolical. We're going to first recommend that all of you go to the top of StopTheCrime.net, the home page, and what you will find is the opportunity to download the symptom list for frequencies. And again, go to the top of StopTheCrime.net. Everyone needs to understand what is occurring. So the only thing that we can do right now is to disengage from all wireless as soon as possible. Now, it's important to understand what the 5G is doing and what they say it's doing. We're told on the IEEE beamforming document that this technology cooked your eyes like eggs in World War II. Cooked your eyes like eggs. So we need to understand where we are with this and what is happening with the 5G. So we're going to go into what the success of 5G is going to require. On the IEEE, that's IEEE, that means Institute for Electric and Electronic Engineers, you can read a document entitled Everything You Need to Know About 5G. And you all need to understand these are military weapons. These are assault frequencies. If you garner nothing more than that, that's what you need to know. But here's what they're telling us and why they're implementing faster data speeds. Because they're telling us that today's mobile users want faster data speeds and more reliable service. And they say the next generation of wireless networks, 5G, promises to deliver just that and so much more. The 5G users should be able to download a high-definition film in under a second, a task that took 10 minutes on the 4G. The wireless engineers say that networks will boost the development of other new technologies such as autonomous vehicles and the Internet of Things. We are being eliminated. That is the most important takeaway of this conversation, is about. But they say that, and what I find extremely interesting, and again, you can look at this on stopthecrime.net, in our bills that we get with Pacific Gas and Electric for our electric bills, almost on a monthly basis, there's a bill insert. And, of course, Pacific Gas and Electric and your utilities are all run by Rothschild. And they have an explanation about EMF frequencies and whether it causes health problems or not. And there's a very interesting paragraph in their insert. They tell us that international, national, and California laws, because these are inserts in our bills, are unable to define whether the frequencies are safe or not safe. And this remains the circumstances of the findings to date. So they're telling us it is still uncertain. They use the word uncertainty. You can download this again at the top of stopthecrime.net. You're likely getting these in your bills. People do not read the inserts. We know that the evil doers are required, it's a code of ethics, that they must let us know what they're doing in advance. So what else is happening now? We've just found out recently that the World Health Organization has identified 5G as an addiction. Video gaming is now an addiction and a mental disorder, of which drugs are now going to be implemented, and this is going to be classified in the International Classification of Diseases, which is a publication that's due out this year. It's updated every so many years, and it will include gaming disorder as a serious health condition. And yet they're telling us that the 5G is necessary so we can connect to the Internet of Things. But yet it is addiction. But worse than that, this is elimination of people. Now, I'd like all of you to type in Palantir and the Orb, O-R-B. You're going to see a very, very diabolical photograph of Donald Trump in Saudi Arabia, putting his hands on the crystal ball, which represents Palantir, or thought crime prediction. And we need to understand it would not have mattered who got in the White House. It does not matter. We're a corporate structure. We don't have the elected officials that we think we have. And as soon and as quickly as we can discard that propaganda out of our minds, the better off we will be in understanding how we need to protect ourselves. Now, I will tell you, I spoke with Dr. Bill Deagle yesterday, and I was on his show, and he is talking about the creation of a device that will help to reduce the frequencies that we're going to be hit with. We are going to be slaughtered, and many people now are creating devices. So, Sean, when we talk about solutions, we have the capability and the know-how to have certain protections available to us. Many people also have found that crystals used properly can deflect frequencies. We recently learned that the crystals used in the radios in World War II was one of the main advantages that the United States had. And this was the quartz in the radios. So crystals are extremely powerful, and many people are now going to be implementing crystals around their properties and in their homes to deflect some of these frequencies that are now escalating. So let's read a little more about 5G and what some of the problems with 5G is and why the Wildlands Project is being implemented to drive us out of the rural lands. And that is because 5G will not work in the country. It must and will be implemented into the density in the cities. It is a dense network of frequencies. And here's what we know about that. They go on to tell us that there's one problem that the 5G runs into. They tell us that many people are using devices and they're consuming more data than ever before, but their data remains crammed on the same bands of radio frequency spectrum for mobile providers that have always been used in the past. And this means less bandwidth for everyone, causing slower service and more dropped connections. This is how they're selling this to us. But they go, the need to really literally deploy hundreds and hundreds of these in our cities. In fact, they tell us that these small mobile portable miniature base stations, or 5G, will be deployed every 820 feet apart throughout our cities. There will be thousands, millions of these throughout our cities. They say to prevent our cell signals from being dropped, the carriers will install millions of these, and they will form a dense network that act like a relay team, receiving signals from other base stations and sending data to users at any location. They go on to tell us that this radically different network structure will provide a more targeted and efficient use of the broadband spectrum. Having more stations means the frequencies that one station uses to connect with devices in one area can be reused by another station serve in another area. But there is a problem. The sheer number of small cells require to build a 5G network, and it will be hard to set up in rural areas. And here's what they're telling us the difficulty in the country areas are. Vegetation prevents the signals from being able to travel, and also rain prevents the signals from traveling. Hence, the weather control and the droughts that will not prohibit the signals from traveling. Again, they want us out of the country. All of these signals penetrate all structures and all living things. This is what is intended with 5G. And in fact, Sean, we're having meetings here in Santa Rosa because they're rolling them out here now in Northern California, and they're saying that they're going to start rolling these out in Sacramento in California. But these are headed to you too. So what we're finding is that these micro cell towers that are putting unimaginable watts and frequencies into the environment, it's microwave radiation warfare is what this is. And they're putting them on our sidewalks. They can't underground the 5G network. And this is, of course, without any public input or knowledge, just like the Palantir or the Thought Police implementation in New Orleans. Not even the city council, who doesn't represent us anyway, but not even the city council was aware of the implementation of the CIA-backed predictive policing in New Orleans.
Yeah, and you know what? I have to just jump in. I've been quiet this whole time because you really stunned me with that picture of Trump with the magic orb in Saudi Arabia. And these are just a couple of recent headlines here from the Daily Mail 5 days ago. Secretive startup uses predictive policing in New Orleans. And Palantir, the company that knows too much, from New York Daily News just 2 days ago. Guys, this is just as serious as a heart attack. It seems to me that they've privatized their eugenics programs. That's what's going on here, Deborah.
That's exactly what's going on. Now we're going to jump into something else because we literally got this Palantir information from a source that has now sent it out. We've been putting it across on as many outlets as possible. I would highly recommend everyone go to stopthecrime.net, download these documents for yourself, see for yourself what your cities are leading you into. It's not a matter of, sadly, of of stopping this. This is a rollout of genocide. Now, we're going to be really trying to create public awareness. This is why we're talking about it right now. But I want to jump in to one more thing that's diabolical, and everyone needs to understand what has also happened to our food supply. We know it's been poisoned. We know the water's been poisoned. We know the air has been poisoned. But we need to talk about Cinemix. And Cinemix is spelled Senomyx. Senomyx. And all of you listening can go to stopthecrime.net, type that in our search bar, and you will find this information. It's very startling. You're going to see photographs that are going to be very, very disturbing. But more importantly, you're not going to want to eat this, okay? So we're going to talk about what this is. There's a list of companies that are using human fetal cells from aborted babies as a flavor enhancement in our food supply.
Pepsi was busted for doing that. Pepsi was using that as a flavor enhancer in their cola.
Yeah, PepsiCo is certainly one of them, but the list is very long, and it's important for everybody to download the flyer that we have on stopthecrime.net so you don't consume this aborted fetal tissue. What does it do? Well, it incites anger, and it literally rewires our brain as we cannibalize ourselves. The same thing, of course, which happened with mad cow disease when they were grinding up roadkill and other cattle and feeding it to the cattle. We're being fed our own species, and we must know the products that are certainly implementing this. So I'm going to just read some of this to you now. But again, I caution you when you type in the list of companies using fetal cells from aborted babies, which you can do. Again, the list of companies using fetal cells from aborted babies. You're going to see a very disturbing photograph. But Cinemix is listed on its website, and its partners decided to ignore the letter from the Right to Life group that was certainly organizing against the use of humans in the food supply. And sadly, the Right for Life group lost their bid to stop this during the Obama administration. Now remember, it doesn't matter who's president. Anyone could have been president at that time. We're a corporate structure. We're run by the corporation, and certainly PepsiCo is a massive corporation. So during the Obama administration, and sadly, on February 28th of 2012, the President's Security and Exchange Commission ruled that PepsiCo's use of aborted fetal human tissue remains in their research and development agreement with Cinemix to produce flavor enhancements, falls under ordinary business operations. So we're going to talk about a list of products. You should not be consuming these products. All soft drinks and Pepsi, all drinks Sierra Mist, all drinks Mountain Dew, all in-beer mug root beer and Pepsi, drinks of No Fear, Ocean Spray, Seattle's Best Coffee, all brands of energy drinks, all brands, Aquafina water, Double Shot, some of the Frappuccinos, Gatorade, they go on, Tropicana, all products of Nestle, including coffee creamers, instant soups, bouillon cubes, ketchup, sauces, instant noodles, etc. Bubble gum, Chiclets, Clarets, Dentyne, Trident. There's many other lists of gums as well. You need to look at this for yourselves. They talk about Cadbury Adams candies, and they mention the original gummies and many other Cadbury candies as well. Certs and Halls cough drops. The company produces, there are also companies that produce anti-wrinkle creams containing the cells of aborted babies as well, of 14 weeks gestation. And there's a list of the creams that we need to understand have the aborted fetal tissue in it as well. So I can only say, Sean, we do not have a government. We are being literally fried, cooked by these frequencies. It's like being in a microwave oven. We need to understand how they're going to do away with mass populations in the United States through resilient cities. And the words infrastructure changes after weather weapon assaults. This is what they're doing. Again, they're deploying cameras all over. They plan them in all the states with infrared, as I said earlier, to track and monitor our movements in real time, 24/7, 365. And I liken this to a deadly video game gone live. I remember the Situation Room that Hillary Clinton and others sat in as they watched the horrific murders that were occurring at that time at the embassy. This is what is happening now. There's a movie called Paintball that I would recommend people take a look at. This is what is happening. We're being wired up, we're being predictively programmed, and we are being slaughtered. So the good news is, I suppose, is you now know you should be detaching yourself from wireless as best possible. Wrap your wireless up in Mylar until you cannot receive a signal. Stay away from your computer LED lights as long as possible. In fact, all your computer screens have LED lights. LED lights are absolutely causing blindness on the way from macular degeneration to other eye diseases, nearsightedness. We're losing our eyesight as a result of the silent weapon systems of our lighting as well. In fact, recently we went to an ophthalmologist and pulled some flyers from the office, and everyone needs to be doing this. You need to understand how technology is being used and the sinister side and how we need to protect our vision. And there's, of course, saying that the vision loss is representing itself as tired eyes, sensitivity to light, loss of sharp contrast of vision, difficulty seeing at night, discomforting glare, fatigue, difficulty staying focused, difficulty falling or staying asleep, headaches, increase in migraines, behavioral issues in children, risk of early onset cataracts, risk of macular degeneration, increased risk of diabetes, increased risk of obesity. This is just from the lighting alone. And the Department of Energy has approved this silent weapons system of lighting throughout our country under the guise of reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. This is a worldwide assault of lighting. It's not just in the United States with the change out now of all of our street lights to LED. We have a YouTube up. It's called LED Lights, a Silent Weapons Assault. We would certainly ask that all of you send this out far and wide, make comments under the video, adding more things that you learn about the assaults of the lighting alone. So by knowing these things, you can make different choices as best you can. We recently had a health forum with a group of people where we are talking about the different things we can do. There's many things that we can do. We have to first also become aware of the poisons in our cooking ware. Much of our cookware in the United States is prohibited from other countries. Did you know that? I didn't know that, but it's true. They use lead and cadmium in glassware that we use to heat things in, and they use coatings on pans that gets into our food. They use metals that get into our foods, and one of the things I didn't know was cast iron is one of the worst. So we're going to have solution information on stopthecrime.net about the kind of cookware that you should get, what you should not be cooking your food in. Even if you're spending more money for what you think is organic, there is sadly, as many of you can appreciate, no such thing as organic, not with the poisons and the level of toxicities in our water. And I want to leave you with probably the best news of all. and that is that we have primary water. We are not running out of water. We have access to pure, fresh drinking water. We need to understand that water is a renewable. Please go to primarywater.org. Take a look at the wonders of water. Don't be deceived. We also, at the very top of stopthecrime.net, have a discussion on the creation of fossil fuels. Our petroleum never did come from dead animals or plant material. And we have the genocide treaty, which I talk about, also at the very top under the banner of stopthecrime.net on the home page, and then flanked by the truth about water. So there are very important things that we need to know. Our children are being hit with frequencies. Never before have we had increased levels of depression and suicide in our children, and it's because of the onslaught of the cell phones. Listen to the cooking of humanity. And Sean, I really want to thank you for having me on today. I hope that people that hear this will go to stopthecrime.net. Please subscribe and watch our YouTubes, and just stay in contact with other like-minded people, because we are heading in to a reality that most people don't realize is occurring.
Yep, absolutely. Well, you know how much we appreciate your time. And before we part ways, let me just say this. Guys, you know that Google wants to control all of the world's information. And it was Alphabet CEO, former CEO Eric Schmidt, who said, we should just be able to give you one answer, the right answer every time. So this is Big Brother. This is Orwell's wet dream. And so as it relates to Cinemix, let me just...
Yeah.
Yep. Let me just say this, guys. I'm going to read an article here for you from 2012, just part of an article here, because if you Google that, if you Google Cinemix now, you're getting the first return is a Snopes debunking the whole thing. Here's the fact. Confused about the Pepsi fetal cell issues? Here are the facts. This is from lifesitenews.com. So, bottom line, they say, now remember this is 2012, but very revealing in this article is paragraph 2. Bottom line, there are no aborted embryonic or fetal cells in any of PepsiCo's final products, but aborted cells are used in the development of artificial flavor enhancers by biotech company Cinemix, with which Pepsi signed a 4-year, $30 million agreement in 2010 for research and development. No Pepsi products containing Cinemix flavor enhancers should be expected until 2013. Folks, it's time to wake up. Cinemix's disputed cell line is HEK293, derived from the kidney cells of an aborted baby. This is a horror show. You just can't make this stuff up, folks. And if you're going to trust Google and you're going to trust Snopes, they're going to hide the truth from you. So you have to turn to the alternative news media for hardcore truth, like you've heard on this broadcast with my guest, Deborah Tavares. Deborah, thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you.
All right. Guys, visit stopthecrime.net. Download all the materials. Share this stuff with your friends and family. I'm not sure if we can turn this ship around, but we sure as hell need to try. Because if we don't, the alternative is depopulation. All right, Deborah. God bless.
Thank you. Everyone, again, go to stopthecrime.net. Be well, everybody.
All right. And guys, thank you so much for tuning in for Real News 24/7. Visit us at sgtreport.com. Bye-bye.
The evil of this, I mean, the satanic nature of the pedophilia that's going on, and the combination
Probably you think the world's first digital currency is Bitcoin. What if we told you that the first digital currency was created in the early 1980s and has already reached a market size of about $1 trillion today? 20 times of Bitcoin, it is the most actively traded digital currency out there. Yes, we're talking about miles. What if your miles make you earn? Today, airlines and their program.
This economy on our current system is going to evaporate due to never-ending escalating food prices, global food shortages, and that is just absolutely going to wipe out the economy of every single nation on the planet. There's a lot of different variables for this time around, but these 8 billion people on the planet, I am sorry to say there's not going to be 8 billion people by 2024.
Hey friends, Sean from SGTReport.com here with a very exciting and important call with the one and only David Dubine from the Adapt 2030 YouTube channel. Guys, this call, honestly, it's going to be a game changer, and it's going to help tie a lot of loose ends together for all y'all that have questions about when is the collapse coming, why is the collapse coming, and how much time do we have left. But first, I want to tell you this interview is brought to you by our good friends at SD Bullion. They've been longtime supporters of SGT Report, and I really do appreciate it. If you want to support us, support our sponsor, SD Bullion, and prepare for the collapse by buying physical silver and/or physical gold. If you click at the banner at the top of SGT Report right now, you can get a 10-ounce bar of silver at spot price. Of course, they limit that to one per customer or household, but it's a terrific deal. Use coupon code SILVER23, and right now you can buy 100-ounce generic silver bars at only 19 cents over spot, as many as you'd like. Shop now. Click the banner at the top of SGT Report and visit sdbullion.com. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in. I have on the line David Dubine. David, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
Yeah, great. I'm glad we had a chance to connect on your channel here, because there's so much going on and there's so much negativity talking about the collapse of everything coming. But at the end of this, I really hope that people see there's a brighter future and there is a way for us to thrive and prosper as we go through these gargantuan changes in lifestyle that are set to roll across this planet starting right now. Everything that guests talk about with the economic collapse and all the indicators pointing to such, well, what's bringing that into a large tapestry? Where are all these dots? They're out there, but they're disconnected. But what if you could connect every single sickness? Let's say the body has a cold and you manifest with coughs or sneezes or body aches and pains. That's exactly what the economists are seeing across the planet, and what we see with this tension with saber rattling and everything going on with governments across the planet. These are the symptoms of the sickness. We need to get down into the root cause. What's wrong with the body? What's causing all this? It's just cycles in time and the grand solar minimum and the effect of our crops going to be wiped out. Huge, gargantuan, never-ending food prices, and no bank, no bank can control when food prices rise. That's the scariest thing for a central bank.
Yeah, and guys, we're going to cover everything here from the Chinese ICOs temporarily being stopped, but that soon will be game on again, according to David. We'll talk about that. I want to talk briefly about AC chain and the digitization of assets, and then, of course, the grand solar minimum, about which all of this hinges. And at the end of the day, we're even going to talk about the people in power and their love of money and their love for Baphomet. But first, a little background about David. He's lived in China. He had a biodiesel company there. He now lives in Taiwan. He speaks fluent Mandarin. This is a guy who knows the Chinese culture, and he knows how to speak the language. So to anybody who thinks they're geniuses and know everything about AC chain and know everything about what the Chinese are up to with the cryptos, I got news for you. David is an excellent source for real news, and we're going to go there right now and talk about all of it. So David, first, if you don't mind, before we get to the grand solar minimum, let's build up to it, because as you know, and as you've reported in your videos, the Chinese have thousands and thousands of years of history and records, and they know the patterns, they know the cycles, and we're about to hit another one that could be devastating for humanity. But before we get there, let's talk about the Chinese ICOs. They've temporarily stopped the ICOs, but your video, China's Planned Restart of ICOs and Cryptocurrency Exchange Timeline, January 2008, says it will be reset. They're going to audit all of these, and then it will soon be game on again. Is that correct? The ICOs are not dead in China.
No, they're not. And when you look at the history of China, we also need to look at Sun Tzu, the art of war. It doesn't matter if it's a modern time. This is an economic and an information war. They're trying to dominate the cryptocurrency space. Now, think about Amazon. their mission statement is anything available on planet Earth you can get through Amazon. Well, at the end of this restructuring, any cryptocurrency available on planet Earth is going to be offered through the main crypto exchanges in China, overseen by the Chinese Central Bank. This is where it's going. The end play is they're going to control everything. I don't know if they're going to call it just Zhongguo Huobi, like Chinese cryptocurrency, but it's going to be the largest exchange offering everything from ICOs, everything on an exchange that you can buy, sell, trade, and they are going to offer even the most obscure coins into one gigantic megalith of cryptocurrency on the planet, along with their own digital yuan that they're going to be putting into place during this next meeting that's coming up. It's their 5-year meeting, and then they think out their 5-year plan to take China forward. This is the biggest meeting in 5 years of the Communist Party, and it's coming up in 2 weeks.
Wow. The
whole center point of it is the next 5-year plan encompassing cryptocurrency within China. They're using the art of war. All war is based on deception. And when you get in and you really look at Sun Tzu's sayings and how they're used it thousands of years ago or even modern times, if your enemy is in the middle of making a mistake, do not interrupt them. And we are absolutely making a mistake by going out with all these news articles saying, oh, they're going to forever close the exchanges. It's never coming back. They're never going to do ICOs. Well, you know what? They're stepping back and not correcting us because this is the art of war.
That's so interesting, and I think that the demise of Bitcoin then has been greatly exaggerated. The demise of Ethereum, the demise of ICOs. So they'll use Sun Tzu's art of war to regroup and profit from the ICOs. Is maybe that why they stopped them down, because they were a little bit out of control? Now they're going to audit them and they're going to make sure that they're taxed properly so that the Chinese government can profit?
Well, you have to think, let's go back in ancient history a little bit, where if you were a fiefdom or some smaller provincial government leader or a town leader, you had allegiance and you had to pay duty and bounty to those higher up the chain to you. You were beholden to the emperor or the provincial government head at the time. You had to pay. This is exactly the same. BTCC and some of these smaller exchanges out there like Huobi and whatnot, what were they turning over? 2-3 million a day? And then you look at OKCoin, we're up around 200 million a day. It's a consolidation of power. No different than if all the local rulers and all the township rulers at that time pledged their allegiance and all came together to form a provincial army. At that point, then would go to battle. That's all they're doing is they're consolidating their financial resources into one behemoth that will be then just probably 3 exchanges. There'll be OKCoin out there, I'm sure, but then the other 2 to be named could be up in the air. But this will all be decided in these next meetings coming up in 2 weeks. And even stuff coming out from the Ministry of Finance, they've never put anything on paper that says you must stop the exchanges. These were done voluntarily. And you see the same people leading the charge, BTCC, they were the same ones that tried to take, you go back 2013, they were the same ones. Oh, we need to close the exchanges. Oh, and then they helped Bitcoin prices fall. It's the same players overacting again and again. They are doing what they are told. And it is not, it's just taking a repeating playbook from 1500 years ago in the way that the emperor and the warlords at the time operated. We're looking at it today, but it's just a different ball game. Things move faster, but it's the exact same gameplay.
Okay, now I want to talk to you just briefly about AC Chain, because as you know, there was quite a kerfuffle after my interview with Lynette Zhang, in which she talked about her fears that AC Chain is being used by the Chinese to digitize assets onto the blockchain. Of course, starting with T, which a lot of Americans don't know, David. I think tea in China is more valuable than gold in some cases. It's cherished, and it's a little bit like fine wines. And tea is a great test case for AC Chain, but they've since moved into property. Now they're moving into automobiles. I'm not asking you to defend the AC Chain thesis that Lynette had, that it's tied to the SDR, but I know that you did a 50 or 55-minute video about AC Chain, and it seems to me that that excellent video you did proved that where there's smoke, there may be fire in terms of AC Chain. Can you give people your opinion on AC Chain and maybe the bigger picture of the digitization of assets? Is it a threat to us? Is it something we should worry about or not?
Well, let's start with outside China, digitization of assets. Okay, so going back, we'll come back to the AC Chain, but I don't know if you're familiar with Aqua, AQUA. What they've done is they've digitized water rights across the southeast U.S., some places down in South America, where you can buy a fraction of water rights, and also they're producing revenue off of these same water rights at the same time they've bought the properties that have the water rights. So you're able to fractionalize ownership of water rights, which water is going to be incredibly valuable as we get into this grand solar minimum, because there's always droughts that occur in certain areas. And it's interesting, where they have purchased all these water rights are the places where it dried out last time. So I don't know, are they playing also and using some of the same information? What about LA Token? LA Token is just straight up digitized fine art, property, oil, and gold into fractionalized assets. You can literally buy $10 worth of gold bullion in paper form. Well, it's through their coin, it's through their token. That's why they call it LA Token. And they just had round 2 financing. I think they were looking for $150 million on this last one. They sold out $20 million in a matter of days on the first one. And then Token Stars. Token Stars. This is another ICO out there that's digitizing human beings. It's digitizing tennis stars that they see that are right now at the I wouldn't say amateur level, but they're showing a lot of possibility to getting into the pro arena and making money. So what they're doing is they're digitizing. You can buy part of an upcoming tennis star, and then you get paid out through the earnings that they are going to earn throughout their lifetime. This is where it's already going outside of China. So when we step back into AC Chain and talking about tea and alcohol, you can just see where it's moving to across the planet. It's already 4 or 5 other places outside China. So by no means is AC Chain a specific one-off thing that's happening globally. But where there is smoke, there is fire. China is absolutely claimed in this 5-year meeting of the Communist Party coming up in August or in October. They are going to set aside blockchain technology for a digital yuan running alongside the new gold-backed yuan for their oil trading platforms. So they're going to have the traditional government-issued paper, bond, whatever you want to call it, yuan that we're used to globally right now. They're also going to have the digitized yuan, which is going to be a digital, literally Chinese government coin that comes out, and then they're going to hold that gold against the oil reserve exchange that they're running there in Shanghai.
Okay. And do you personally see any connection at all between AC Chain and the SDR? Is there even the capability to include the SDR in some sort of move towards a world currency that the Rothschilds predicted on that 1988 cover of The Economist magazine would be coming to fruition in 2018? Do you see any tie at all or any role the Chinese are playing in helping to accomplish that goal?
Well, again, if we're using the art of war, they would never broadcast the moves. But if we look at what's currently happening with Omise Go and the Lightning Network and the Plasma scalability autonomous smart contracts, when they fork Ether to run everything so much faster with digital payment systems on the global level that rival anything with Visa or MasterCard, you're looking exactly what Ethereum is going to be doing. And then when you look at all these other payment systems that are within Southeast Asia currently, what's the Everex and Bankera and 10X, and then outside over in Europe you have Monaco and Bancor. All these are digital platforms for payments. And then back even in the US, Coinbase has a Swift card and BitPay. You have Bitcard credit cards coming out right now where you can even go to Bitcoin ATMs and get cash out. China's developing the same exact thing. Are they broadcasting it? No, they're not. I mean, Ethereum is leading, at least in the informational space, which is available online, where you can actually see how they want to scale, how they want to make transactions faster, how they're going to compete with Visa, how they're going to try to dominate the payment space on the planet and bring all the unbanked into the banking system. And this goes right back into fractionalizing everything. Because if you're going to buy a share of Amazon, most people can't afford $1,000 to buy a single share. But if you have $10 and you can frack that out and you can actually take a piece of Amazon for $10 and then 100 other people are holding one share, well, if the share goes up, you get a payback on that. But the stage is already set for the way we're moving. They're allowing the smallest of the unbanked to come into the system. Imagine how much money that is alone in Asia of the people who are not in the traditional banking system, because the barrier to entry is just too high for the cost. And you know, I hate paying that $20 a month to keep my checking account and all these other things open in the bank I use. I hate that. And if I can get away from it, I definitely would. But $20 for somebody living in Asia, that is enough food for their family for an entire month in some of the poorer areas. You telling me that they're going to go in and put their money in a bank when it costs them $20 a month to keep everything open? Right. No way. 10x, you get in there, there's no fees. It's like 0.25% to send money home. They can work in different countries. They can transmit that and it's home, and there's no money lost. They're bringing everybody into the system here. So what's moving forward is absolutely going to be something so massive that's beyond the comprehension of most people where it's going to move to in the future. Looking at today, it truly is out of the bounds of even, you know, where we're going to move to and how much it's going to dominate this space.
Okay. All right, guys, this is so important. We're talking about a sea change here, and it is coming. It's cyclical, and as we're going to document here, it is coming. So I think what I want to do, if you don't mind, David, before we get to the grand solar minimum in the cycles and what the Chinese are so concerned about, and what I think you think all governments are concerned about but aren't telling the people, can you, because you mentioned OmiCgo, and I own a little bit of that, I own a little Neo, a little Ethereum, Litecoin, some of these others. Vitalik Buterin, the brains behind Ethereum, is involved in OmiCgo. Since I think that you are a chess player and you're a couple moves ahead of most of the other pundits I have on, can you give me your thoughts on maybe the top handful, or maybe they're ones we've mentioned, maybe there's ones I've never even heard of. You mentioned LA Token, Token Stars, I've never heard of those. Can you give us a couple of cryptocurrencies that you think are smart gambles or have a profound future, you know, through your eyes as you see it, that our listeners might not be aware of? Can you just give us your cliff notes on maybe the top cryptos that you think people should own if they want to have a little skin in the game? Would you be willing to do that?
I would, but I'm not a financial investor at all. This is my own personal opinion about how I see the future unrolling. You have to do your own due diligence. You have to do your own research. Do not even listen to me. You listen to me that I am not a financial advisor. You need to go off and do your own research. And there's so much out there on the internet. And there's so much. You can contact these companies directly. You need to do your own due diligence before investing in anything. I mean, that's traditional. If you're going to go invest in the stock market, you're not just going to drop your money in. I mean, you might listen to a couple of news reports, but hopefully you would at least look at earnings reports or something before you would go put your money in. It's the same thing with these coins. What's the usage for it in the future? How fast can they scale it out? Who's the team that's running it? And is it doable? And is there something else out there already that's taken over? You know, there has to be really some use for these coins. You can't just start a car wash service coin or something. Maybe you could, but generally that's not going to be usable for most people. Well, payment systems. So let's think if we want to go out on a global level where we want to restart an entirely new system from the bottom up. What are you going to need first to roll out this type of system where everything will be in the crypto world, where you will buy, sell, save, trade, whatever it might be, using these digital currencies of the future? Well, first, you're going to have to get the payment system figured out. You're going to have to make it entry easy for people like my mom who can get in easily, that don't get frustrated when they have to put in a 30-digit code to move money around. You're going to have to break through all these barriers first. So you're looking for the tokens that will, A, provide the base platform for all of the networks that can run financial transactions, and the amount of speed that needs to come with it. That's why Plasma and Ethereum is always going to be a huge one. I mean, they're running the entire system of new payment processors across the planet that's going to rival Visa. So if you're not holding Ethereum, I mean, this is it. This is, until something else comes out, Omisego, Ethereum, Quantum as well. That's another one that you might want to look at, Quantum, because they're going to be working with that quantum network, and that's what China's rolling out, so they can do satellite. And this is another thing people aren't talking about. There's so many pundits out there going, oh, well, what if the government's cut down the internet? What's going to happen? Well, you know, you're like 3 steps behind thinking like that, because they already have satellite transmission networks where as long as you have a receiver dish, you can still access the entire blockchain through satellites. Why would you need landlines? So when people start saying, oh, well, the government can cut down the internet, well, who cares? If it's being broadcast across the blockchain through satellites, well, then it doesn't really matter. So anybody that's going to control the satellite networks that are going to be broadcasting blockchain, whatever it will be through that satellite network, and Quantum seems to be one of the leaders right now. Not only that, for the security applications. And again, if you're going to be logging in using apps on a phone, you're going to be wanting to look at anything that can provide you the most security. Like Rivets that just had an ICO that came out. They are cryptography with security on anything on an app on a phone. When you log in, you get these separate layers of security on top so it can't be breached. So you got to think about payment systems rolling out and who is going to offer the fastest transmission of that and who can offer you the most safety. So Rivets is a good one on that as well. And I just mentioned a bunch of these 10x. They actually pay, if you're a token holder and you have it in a wallet, that they give you 0.5%. So think about that. If you have 5,000 tokens, sure, it's only 6 cents right now per month, but what happens when it's 20 or 30 times the enrollment of people using it? What if it's 100 times more people using their platform? Right now they have 1 million people. Great, it's at 6 cents. What happens when that thing goes up to 100 million people in less than 2 years? Per token.
That's interesting.
You know, you're looking at thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of investment in that interest coming into you just by holding these tokens. And you know, you're looking at investment plays, you got to start looking at this stuff too. Not just buying and selling for profit, but holding on to these tokens that offer you interest if you stake them or if you even hold them, such as 10x.
Okay, I'm so glad that I asked you this question then, because you gave me a couple that I didn't know about. I've heard of Rivets, but I didn't know that it offered that. Right now it's at 6 cents interest per token per month. Is that what you said?
That's 10x.
Oh, that's 10x. Okay. Okay.
Hey, P-A-Y. That's the symbol for it.
Great.
P-A-Y.
Okay, I've heard of them both, and that's new information to me, and I think the listeners will appreciate that. So I think that it's important to continue to have conversations about the cryptocurrencies because they're not going away. And some of you folks out there may lament that, and the problem is they're not going away. And so we'll continue to talk about the cryptocurrencies because it's the great California gold rush of the 1800s, guys, of the 1700s. I mean, it's a land grab. And some of these tokens you can still get in on real cheap right now, and I don't know that that will always be the case. Now, some of them will be going out of business, some of them will be worthless, and some of them will be going to astronomical valuations. So it's a space we'll continue to follow, and I'm no investment advisor either. Do your own due diligence before buying anything. But according to David, Omisego, Ethereum, Quantum are good ones. Also check out 10x, Rivets. All right, so let's get to the meat of the matter, which is the grand solar minimum. And you being a student of the Chinese, having lived there, speaking the language, know that the Chinese are not messing around geopolitically. They play the long game. They play multi-level chess, and they have the historical records that go back many thousands of years versus our young nation. So let's talk about the grand solar minimum and the collapse. You know, I bring a lot of guests on who are talking about the end of the dollar, the demise of the petrodollar, the collapse is coming. When is it coming? Nobody knows. We're surprised that it hasn't happened yet. And you're kind of working on a different level saying, you guys are looking at the wrong thing. The collapse is going to be global because of the grand solar minimum, which is coming, which is going to lead to a food collapse, which is going to lead to societal chaos, which is going to lead to all sorts of bad things for those who are unprepared. So where would you like to start as it pertains to the grand solar minimum and how this all ties into that?
Oh, you just summed it up in a nutshell right there. Yeah, so the reason I am so fervent about the belief in cryptocurrency is as our economy, it won't collapse, it will evaporate. Now let's make the differentiation right here and right now. This economy on our current system is going to evaporate due to never-ending escalating food prices, global food shortages, and that is just absolutely going to wipe out the economy of every single nation on the planet. And it has every time you look back in history. And it's just, I don't know why people can't just look at a cycle and see what happened in the previous grand solar minimums, specifically with food pricing, societal upheaval, governmental change, population migration. That's just to name a few. And I'm not even going to talk about the diseases because people were malnourished and all that. But just focus on food price rises and economics of the time alone is enough to see the pattern every grand solar minimum. Cryptocurrency is going to take over when everything else crashes. Food is going to be the most expensive, most valuably traded commodity on our planet, period. There's nothing more that will have more value than food at this time. And I'm not talking 20, 30, 40 years in the future. My time frame rolls right back into 2021, 2020. The food shortages are going to be here by then, already that fast. So when you start to look at all the governments trying to string things along as long